Hello students, I'm Sam sir, and we are in the second chapter of your textbook known as India Physical Environment. The topic is Structure and Physiography. This chapter we will be covering in two videos in order to keep each of the videos short. So this is the first part. Remember to see the second part also. Now your textbook starts like this. It says that the Earth is approximately 460 million years old, and over this long period of time, it has undergone many changes brought about mainly by endogenic and exogenic forces. So we have two definitions here. One is endogenic forces and the other is exogenic forces. Now the endogenic forces are the forces coming from within the earth and causing either horizontal movements or vertical movements. Now these forces are called as endogenic forces, and it is these movements which lead to land upliftment. Means sometimes some places the land rises up. Example is the Himalayas have risen up like that, and subsidence. The northern plains, as we know, are a result of subsidence. There's a depression there, or there's an syncline there, which got filled up with alluvium, and that is how we have the northern plains. Also, folding and faulting. It also leads to earthquakes and volcanism. Now let's look at what are exogenic forces. These are the external forces. These are not below the surface of the earth. This is the main difference. External forces are those forces which are acting on the surface of the earth. Now the processes can be weathering, erosion and deposition, etc. Now these forces have played an important role in giving shape to various surface and subsurface, that is on the surface and below the surface features of the earth. Now what we are looking at, this irregular shape here, that is an tectonic plate. That's a tectonic plate, and this one is known as Indo-Australian plate. The reason it's called as Indo-Australian plate is because on one edge it holds the landmass of India, and on the other it holds the landmass of Australia. Now, over a period of time, some 70 million years ago, this plate broke, and the Indian subcontinent moved upwards and hit Asian subcontinent. And once upon a time, India was below the equator. Now this went up towards the north and is now there in the place where we know it is. At the same time, the Australian plate moved towards the east and reached where it is now. So that is landmass of Australia reaching to the east, and the Indian landmass colliding with the Eurasian plate, that is the plate which is holding Europe and Asia, that is the Eurasian plate. And today also this movement is going on. Today also the Indian plate moves towards the Eurasian plate at the rate of 5 centimeter per year. So that is about 2 inches. The northward movement of the Indian tectonic plate pushing slowly against the Asiatic plate is evident by the frequent earthquakes in the region. Over 1 month, you know that Delhi has been experiencing some kind of tremor, small tremors, something is always happening there. Similarly, the Garhwal region, tremors are very common there, and this Indian plate is pushing against that Asiatic plate, and that is the reason why earthquakes are very frequent there. Now, during the movement of the Indian plate towards the Asiatic plate, a major event that occurred was the outpouring of lava and formation of the Deccan Trap. And about this you have read in standard 9 also, about the formation of the Deccan Traps, and that is we call it as a shield volcano. you have studied about the plate boundaries, and in the convergent plates, if two plates are converging, and if there's subduction, that is one plate is going below the other. Now, because of this, there is an upliftment on the surface of the earth. Now, that is how the Himalayas have come into existence. They have been pushed up. Now, such causes this causes changes in the position of the jet stream also, and the westerly winds also, and that affects the climate directly. The Himalayas continue to rise at a rate of about 1 centimeter per year. This diagram is to show you about this process. On the left hand side with the a dark green color is the Indian foreland, and it's pushing towards the uh, north. And in the north we have the Tibetan plate, and you can see the light violet zone. It's pushing below the Tibetan fault zone, and because of that, the Himalayas have risen up. This peak is the Dholagiri, and the diagram which is given below it shows the various uh, features and activities which has caused Dholagiri to rise up. And it's also due to the interplay of endogenic and exogenic forces and lateral movement of the plates that the present geological structure and geomorphological processes which are active in the Indian subcontinent which have come into existence. The basis of India's geological divisions are the variations in its geological structures and formations. We have a vast country, and there are a lot of geological divisions, and the basis of that is the changes which has occurred on the surface. We'll be studying the geological regions of India as a peninsula block, the Himalayas and the Peninsula Mountains, that is the Himalayan mountains and the Peninsula Mountains, and also the plains of Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra. Now this is the peninsula block. This block may be taken as an irregular line running from Kutch along the western flank of the Aravallis near Delhi, and then roughly parallel to the Yamuna and the Ganga, as far as Rajmahal Hills and the Ganga Delta. Apart from these, the Karbi Anglong and the Meghalaya Plateau in the northeast and Rajasthan in the west are also extensions of this block. The northeastern parts are separated by Malda Fault in West Bengal, which you can see here on the near the Sundarbans Delta, and from Chota Nagpur Plateau. In Rajasthan, the desert and other desert-like features overlay this block. The peninsula is formed essentially by a great complex of very ancient gneiss. GNEISS. Gneiss is a type of rock, and granites. Both are igneous rocks, which constitute a major part of it. Since the Cambrian period, the peninsula has been standing like a rigid block. So we are comparing the other features with the peninsula. So you have to just remember that this is standing like a rigid block, with the exception of some of the western coast, which is submerged near the sea and beneath the sea, and some other parts changed due to tectonic activity. As a part of the Indo-Australian plate, it has been subjected to various vertical movements and block faulting. The rift valleys of Narmada, the Tapi, and the Mahanadi, and the Satpura block mountains are examples of this. The peninsula mostly consists of relics and residual mountains like the Aravallis, the Nallamala mountains, Nallamala hills, and the Javadi hills and Velikonda hills. The Palkonda range and the Mahendragiri also. The river valleys here are shallow with low gradients. Now this is the map of the northern region. You can see the Himalayas, uh, the various ranges: Pir Panjal, Zanskar, and Ladakh range. And you also have the eastern hills. We'll be studying each of this in detail. Similarly, the southern block, we have the plateau, and we have the Western Ghats and the western coast, that is the western coastal plains, and we have the eastern coastal plains. And we'll be studying about the islands Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now, what is the material made up of? Just like I mentioned that this is formed by a great complex of very ancient gneiss and granite. Now, these are the major components. The peninsula has been standing like a rigid block, again reiterate, since the Cambrian period, and some of its western coast got submerged. That is the reason we have good ports and harbors on the western coast and not in the eastern coast. Now we study the Himalayan and the Peninsula mountains. The Himalayas and other peninsula mountains are young, they are relatively young and weak and also flexible. In contrast, this is in contrast to the rigid and stable peninsula block. So they are still subjected to the interplay of exogenic and endogenic forces. That is the reason why earthquakes are common in the Himalayan areas. And this results in the formation of faults and folds and thrust plains. Now the Himalayan and Peninsula mountains are also volcanic in origin, and these are dissected by fast flowing rivers which are in their youthful stage. They form various kind of gorges. Some are V-shaped, some, and you also have the rapids and the waterfalls. This is the Indo-Ganga Brahmaputra plain. On the west, we have the Indus River system. Then in the center, we have the Ganga River system with all its tributaries. And then we have the Brahmaputra, which originates in river and flows across, goes enters into Arunachal Pradesh, and then empties out into Bay of Bengal through Bangladesh. Now the Indus Ganga Brahmaputra plain has been formed by the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra rivers, and it was originally a geosynclinal depression which attained its maximum development over the third phase of the Himalayan mountain formation, and that is having a timeline of some 64 million years ago. When we say syncline, that means a depression. When the Himalayas rose, there was a corresponding depression created in the Indian peninsular region in the north, and that got filled up with the debris which the rivers brought. And now this depression has been filled gradually with sediments brought from by the Himalayan peninsular rivers since then. Now the average depth of alluvium in some places is 1000 meters and the maximum depth we can find is about 2000 meters. While the peninsular block was rigid, the Himalayan and the peninsular mountains are young. They are weak also and flexible and form various types of valleys. And the river plains are formed on the geosynclinal depressions. It is evident that the different regions of India has far-reaching impact upon other related aspects. Now these variations are important from the geographical point of view. The relief and physiography of India has been greatly influenced by the geological and geomorphological processes active in the subcontinent. Now, the physiography of an area is the outcome of the structure, number one, second is processes, and number three, the stage of development. The land of India is characterized by a great diversity in its physical features. The north has a vast expanse of rugged topography, which consists of a series of mountain ranges with varied peaks. It has got valleys, it has got deep gorges also. And the south consists of a stable tableland. Tableland is the plateau with highly dissected plateaus, denuded rocks, and developed series of scarps. In between them, uh, there lies the vast North Indian plain. Now, in physiography, it's about the subfield of geography that studies the physical patterns and processes of the earth. This is the definition of the word physiography. Now, it aims to understand the forces that produce and change rocks, oceans, weathers, and global flora and fauna patterns. Now, based on these variations, there are broadly these six physiographic divisions of India. We have the north and the northeastern mountains, and we have the northern plains, we have the peninsula plateau, we have the Indian desert, and the coastal plains, and of course the islands. Now, when we go to study them one by one, the north and the northeastern mountains they consist of the Himalayas and the northeastern hills. The Himalayas consist of a series of parallel mountain ranges. The approximate length of the Great Himalayan Range is about 2,000 kilometers when you measure it from in the east to west or west to east direction. The width varies between 160 kilometers and 400 kilometers. Now, this is the northern mountains. On the northwest, we have the Suleiman Range, which now lies in Pakistan. We have the Pamir North, which lying in Uzbekistan, and it consists of the Hindu Kush and the Kunlun Mountains. Then we have three ranges about which you have studied in 9th standard also. Now, they are known as the Greater Himalayas, the Middle Himalayas, and the Shivaliks. The northernmost is the range of Greater Himalaya. The middle one is the Middle Himalayas, and also known as the Zaskar range in Jammu, Kashmir, and then the Shivalik range, which is the southernmost. From from west to east, when you go, westernmost we have the Karakoram range, then the Indus region, and then the Great Himalayan range, and then we have the Eastern Himalayas. The Himalayas are a physical barrier. They have been guarding India against invaders from Mongol, for example. Some of them, such as Taimur, they managed to conquer India. But they are also a barrier for climatic and drainage and cultural reasons. They are the divide for this also. The Himalayas can be divided into these subdivisions on the basis of relief, alignment of ranges, and other features. So we have these five subdivisions. We have the Kashmir or the northwestern Himalayas. Then we have the Himachal and Uttarakhand Himalayas. Now we are going from north and along the Himalayas towards the south and going towards the east. So in examination, if you're asked, just have a mental picture of the map of India. Think of Jammu and Kashmir being the northernmost, and below that you have the Himalayas, Himachal and the Uttarakhand. Then we have the Darjeeling and Sikkim on the eastern side of Nepal. Then when you go further east, you have the Arunachal Himalayas, and of course then the eastern states, the Seven Sisters, as they are known as, they consist of hills and mountains. They are also part of the Himalayas. Now, about the Kashmir or the northwestern Himalayas, There are some ranges important: Karakoram, Ladakh, Zanskar, and Pir Panjal. Now there's a cold desert to the northeast of the Kashmir Himalayas. Ladakh, as you know, is a cold desert. Kashmir Valley lies between the Great Himalayas and the Pir Panjal Range. Now, this has got some important glaciers. Example is Boltoro and Siachen. Now, there's a type of thick deposit of glacial clay. Now, glacial clay is a clay which the glaciers have brought, and other materials which the glaciers have brought, and these with materials which are embedded with moraines. Moraines are also the material which the glaciers have brought. Now, this is known as Kareva Formation. Now, this is important for Himalayas and the Kashmir region. The Kareva is useful for the cultivation of saffron or saffron. Now, it has got some passes which are important. Passes are the gap between two mountains which is low enough for people to cross. We have the Zojila Pass, the Banihal, and Potula and Kardungla. When you talk about this word La, it means a pass. Then there are some lakes here. There are freshwater lakes as well as saltwater lakes. The freshwater lakes are Dal Lake and Ular Lake, and the saltwater lakes are Pongang So and So Moridi. The word So means a lake. Now, this region is drained by the Indus River and its tributaries, Jhelum and Chenab. This is the picture of crocus flower, also known as Zafran in Urdu and saffron in English. The filaments are taken out, dried, and used as saffron in food industry. Now, Kashmir Valley and the northwestern Himalayas are known for its scenic beauty, and it's also a place of pilgrimage. You already know about such names as Vaishno Devi, Amarnath, and Chalara Sharif, etc. Srinagar is located on the bank of the Jhelum. Now, Jhelum River itself is unique. It's because it's just originated in the Himalayas, and it's still in a youthful stage when it flows through Srinagar. And in a youthful stage, a river usually does not form meanders. Meanders are the bends, but this river does. The southernmost part of this region consists of longitudinal valleys known as Dun. Now we have Jammu Dun and Pathankot Dun as example. Now between Ravi River in the west and the Kali River in the east, Kali is a tributary of the Gagra River. We have the second division of Himalayas known as the Himachal Himalayas and the Uttarakhand Himalayas. This is drained by Indus River and the Ganga River, and the tributaries of Indus River are Ravi, Bias, and Satluj rivers. The tributaries of Ganga are Yamuna and Gagra. The northernmost part is an extension of Ladakh Cold Desert, which lies in the Spiti subdivision of Lahore and Spiti district. All the three ranges of the Himalayas are prominent in this section. These are the Great Himalayas, the Lesser Himalayas, also known as Dhaula Dhar in Himachal Pradesh and Nagtiba in Uttarakhand, and the Shivalik range. Some important and beautiful hill stations are here. We have Dharamshala, Mussoorie, Kasoli, Almora, Lansdowne, and Ranikhet. They have been made popular by the British when they were ruling here. Now we talk about two features. These are land formation for Shivalik and the Dun. The Shivalik is a geological formation found in and around a place called Shivwala near Dehradun. This once upon a time used to be the headquarters of the Imperial Survey, that is a geological survey of the British times. Now about the Dun formation. Some important dunes are Chandigarh and Kalka Dun, Nalagarh Dun, and Dehradun, out of which the Dehradun is the largest. Some other dunes are Harike Dun, which is there in Punjab, and Kota Dun. The dunes are inhabited by a tribe known as the Bhotiyas. and these are nomadic groups. They keep on migrating with their herd of sheep and goats. They migrate to places they call as the bugyas. Now bugyas are summer grassland in the higher reaches. Here they are enjoying celebrating a festival, and this is what a bugya looks like. Lucky people. Some very beautiful features on the earth out here. This one is known as the Valley of Flowers, which is also present in this division of Himalayas. There are places of pilgrimage and prayags. Prayags are, as you know, are the confluences where two rivers meet. The major places of pilgrimage are Gangotri, Yamunotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath, and Hemkut Sahib. And the famous confluences or the prayags are the Dev Prayag, Rudra Prayag, Karna Prayag, Nan Prayag, and Vishnu Prayag. This is a diagrammatic representation of the prayags. It shows on which rivers they are located. Now the next division of the Himalayas is known as the Darjeeling and the Sikkim Himalayas. These are on the east of Nepal. So they have the Nepal Himalayas in the west and Bhutan Himalayas in the east. This division of Himalayas is small, but it is important part of the Himalayas, and they are known for fast-flowing rivers such as the Tista. They have high mountain peaks. Kanchenjunga is an example. The Everest is also nearby, and because of the high mountains, there are also deep valleys. In the same division of Himalayas, you find the tribal people known as the Lepchas. The southernmost part, particularly the Darjeeling Hills, has a mixed population of Nepalis and Bengalis, and also tribals from central India, which are working in the tea gardens there. Now, this region of Himalayas doesn't have any Shivalik formations. Instead, there are what they locally call as the Duar formations, and which is important for tea plantation because these Duar formations they are rich in humus, and it makes the climate at such an elevation suitable for tea plantation. This is a family of Lepcha tribals. This is a picture of the tea plantation in Darjeeling. This type of flower is known as orchid, and there are several hundred varieties of orchids, and the Sikkim region of Himalaya is known for orchids. Now, the next division of the Himalayas is known as the Arunachal Himalayas. Now, from the east of Bhutan Himalayas and up to a pass known as the Difu Pass in the east, that is the extent of the Arunachal Himalayas. Now, it has some important mountain peaks. One is known as Kangtu, and the second one is known as Namche Barwa. Now, Namche Barwa, you have read about this in standard 9 also, and in this chapter also we will come across it. So just keep that name in mind. Now, the rivers here are fast flowing, and so they form deep gorges. And the Brahmaputra river flows through a deep gorge after crossing Namcha Barwa. Now, other rivers in this region are Kameng, Subansiri, Dihang, Dibang, and Lohit. All are perennial rivers. Now, this hill, or it's not a high mountain, it's a rather a high hill, and this hill is known as Namche Barwa. And you can see this river, U-shaped river. Now, the side which is to your right hand side, that is coming from Tibet, and the side of the river which is on your left, it's entering into India. So when it's coming from Tibet, in Tibet the Brahmaputra is known as Yarlung Sangpo, and when it reaches India we call it the Brahmaputra. The same thing if you see on the map. Here you can see where Nepal is located. You can see the mountains Everest and Makalu, and in the Indian land area you have the Kanchenjunga, and to the north of that you see the river Sangpo, and that goes to the east, and there you have this mountain known as Namcha Parva, and from there it takes a sharp right turn and enters into the Indian territory. It enters into what you call Arunachal Pradesh. There is joined by rivers Dihang and Lohit, and then continues forward as one broad stream of Brahmaputra, and some more rivers join there, and finally it empties out into the Bay of Bengal. Now the next section of the Himalayas is known as the Eastern Hills and Mountains. They are a part of the Himalayan mountain system. They have different local names. In north they are known as the Patkai Bhum and the Naga Hills and Manipuri Hills. In the south we have the Mizo and Lushai Hills. And this is inhabited by various tribes. They practice jhum cultivation. You have learnt in standard 10. Jhum cultivation is you just slash and burn one area, clear it for agriculture, practice agriculture for some time, maybe couple of years, and when the fertility of the soil reduces, you go to another place and repeat the process. Most of these ranges are separated from each other by numerous small rivers. That is, example is in Manipur and in Mizoram there is a river called Barak. And Manipur has a unique physiography due to the presence of a large lake known as a Loktak Lake at the center and surrounded by mountains from all sides. Mizoram is also known as Molasses Basin, and it is made up of soft unconsolidated deposits. This is a photograph of a hill. It's a Mizo hill in Mizoram. This is a picture of the Loktak Lake. If you can see those ring-like structures in the lake, these ring-like structures are known as Phomdi in their local language, and these are floating. This is not, it's not a solid structure. These rings keep floating, and they are known as floating islands. And this is the only place in the world you can see islands which float. And this is made up of decomposing vegetation, decomposing vegetation matter, and it is home to a particular type of deer known as the Sangai deer, and this one is also known as the brow antlered deer because of the way its antlers, its horns grow on its head. And this is the only place in the world that you find these deers and that landform, and that is why UNICEF, the United Nations, has given it a conservation status. Now when we look at the rivers of the northern hills, most of the rivers in Nagaland form the tributary of the Brahmaputra, and there are two rivers of Manipur and Mizoram, and these are the tributaries of the Barak River, and Barak River is a tributary of the Meghna. So these rivers keep joining each other. The rivers in the eastern part of Manipur are tributaries of Chinwin, and then Chinwin in turn is a tributary of Irrawaddy, and this Chinwin River is in Myanmar, earlier which was known as Burma. This is the end of part 1 of the chapter. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and just wait, I'll be putting the part 2 very soon. Bye till then.